Hello, Em. Are you in there? Are you in that camera right over there? Hi, Em. How you doing, girl? Hey, Emily. It's your dad, Miguel. Miguel Angelo Trujillo. Welcome. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I appreciate it. What day is today? Today is the 14th of September, 2018, and it is a Saturday. Saturday morning. Actually, no, it's not Saturday. It's Friday. The days change so rapidly, I have trouble keeping track sometimes. I definitely need my watch. So happy Friday morning. So today I didn't have work, and so it's kind of been a lazy day, even though it is only like 8 o'clock. I am, for me, making a video like this at 8 o'clock is lazy. Because I usually make them earlier than this in the morning. So, how are you doing today, girl? How are things? All right. Well, let's start the day like we usually do, our videos, by reading a passage from the book Peaceful Living by Mary Mackenzie. Aha! As you probably know by now, I like to call myself a pacifist. And I do my best to conduct my life in such a way, in that very same way. So here we go. September 14th. I always say to myself, what is the most important thing we can think about at this extraordinary moment? By R. Buckminster Fuller. You may not be familiar with Buckminster Fuller, but I am. He's like a scientist, visionary, thinker. In fact, the Buckminster Fullerene is named after him. That's a molecule in a special round shape made, I think it's C60. It's got 60 carbon atoms in it. Anyway, our Buckminster Fuller was a hero of mine when I was in high school. And I read one of his books and was motivated by a lot of his creative ideas, his thinking, and kind of his philosophy a little bit. Now I didn't take it that deep, I wasn't really a follower of or an extreme admirer of his, but I appreciated what he had to say a little bit, and I liked how imaginative and creative he was in his writing and in his work. So let me repeat again the quote here selected by Mary Mackenzie. The quote says, I always say to myself, what is the most important thing we can think about at this extraordinary moment? Well, first, I like the idea of thinking of each moment as extraordinary. Yeah. In fact, this idea has become quite important to me recently. The idea of small things, basic things, being really important and valuable. They're what make up our lives. These moments, these second to second moments. And I think we don't appreciate them enough. And I don't think we appreciate them for the wonder and the awe that these moments provide to us. They are just as miraculous as any other moment. And it's funny how we take them for granted. Oh, it's just another day. No, it's not. This is a moment that we're alive. We have a finite number of them. Appreciate each one as if it were gold. As if it were gold. I'm serious. I think it's really important. And I love the idea of thinking about a moment as extraordinary, an ordinary moment. And not only that, I also really appreciate people who believe this. People, in fact, some of my favorite people are people who take ordinary moments and make them extraordinary, partly because they help me recognize how extraordinary they are. That's easy to do. All it takes is a reminder about how extraordinary the present moment is, and just a sort of an appreciation of the moment in the moment. And these are my favorite people who remind me about how wonderful and awe-inspiring the present moment is. And yeah, I think I want to be around those kind of people. I want to be around these people who make the most of every moment, no matter what it is, and who are able to find enjoyment in that moment. These are people who I admire and that I want to be around. And it's really all about appreciating the present moment and what's here to sort of mine and explore for joy and fulfillment and satisfaction. Yeah. Okay. That isn't necessarily what the content of the quote is. Buckminster Fuller talks about, he says, I always say to myself, what is the most important thing we can think about at this extraordinary moment? Well, golly, I don't know. What is the most important thing that we could consider in this moment? It would depend on your values, the things that you find important. And that would be different for every person. And it probably wouldn't be the same for any two people. So, maybe it would be similar perhaps. But the most important thing, I don't know if I could help anybody discern what the most important thing in the present moment is. If they have needs to satisfy, like hunger or food or shelter or safety, then I would say those items are the most important in the moment to consider. Though if all of those items are satisfied, I guess I would suggest that whatever need happens to be unmet that is calling to you in the moment would be the most important thought. Now, there's another way to view this idea. Important could be important historically, or important by the standards of society at large, or, important by the conversations of the day or the philosophical thinking of the day. Maybe some people would consider those ideas important. So it's almost like there's a thought which is of personal importance and a thought which is important to the society at large through, the thoughts important to government or groups of people. Yeah. So I don't know what, at least for me, what the most important thing is right now. I guess the most important thing is for me is my talking with you, my discussing these ideas with you, just sort of a recognition about what's going on right now with me. Okay. I'm intrigued too about what he says here. He says, I always say to myself, what is the most important thing? He always says that to himself. He's giving advice. Buckminster says, hey, if you want to know what's going on, this is what I always tell myself. He's giving us a little nugget of wisdom. This is how he sort of parses or sort of selects which things in his life he wants to pay attention to. He's always asking himself, what's the most important thing? It seemed to work pretty well. This method seemed to work pretty well for Buckminster Fuller. I think he's dead now, but I think he was quite famous, certainly after writing his books. Anyway, let's hear what Mary Mackenzie has to say about this quote. The subtitle is Being Present in This Moment. Have you ever noticed a tendency for your attention to be everywhere but where you actually are? You may be doing the dishes and stewing over a task you have tomorrow, or changing the baby's diaper while fretting about something you said earlier that day. You may be talking to a friend while worrying about your trip next week. Where is your attention right now as you read this meditation? Take a moment to connect with yourself. Tomorrow will come later and yesterday already happened. This is your moment to live. How can you spend it in a way that you most enjoy? Be conscious and present as much as possible in your life, and you will feel more connection and joy in all of your activities. And the aphorism for the day is, commit to being present as much as possible in each moment of your life today. Oh, Mary. Okay, so this is what Mary has to say. Oop. Okay. She is an advocate of being in the present moment. And of course, I am an advocate of being in the present moment too. That makes a lot of sense. Now, that's not to say it's not important to consider other things. Human beings, we have a conceptual mind, and we're able to use our imagination and ability to visualize to integrate ideas and learn and do internal rehearsal for future performances. And, we've got this great, it's almost like a backstage where we're able to sort of spend time and mull over ideas. And we basically put what's happening in the foreground on pause. And, we're always just thinking about it in the background. This is a wonderful feature of the human brain. And though we use it a lot, and, that's not a big problem necessarily, but I think people can spend a lot of time back there. They can spend a lot of time backstage, not focused in your present moment awareness. And that's perfectly okay. You just have to make sure that all the spinning plates, so to speak, continue to spin while you're in the background doing the thinking that needs to be done. This idea reminds me of another idea. You may be aware of meditation, and there are a lot of different kinds. And, one kind of sort of focusing practice is where people sort of become aware of the present moment and what's going on. They pay attention to their sensory inputs. They pay attention to what they're seeing and what they're feeling in their body and how it's feeling, say, sitting in the chair, grounded. They're feeling their proprioception in their hands and arms and body, and really focused on all the sensory data that's coming in. And a lot of people find that relaxing, and in fact, indeed it is. And I have a theory about why it might be relaxing. And my theory is that you're focusing less on this background information, the concepts that are moving through your mind, and more on just your sensory experience. And what's great about that is, basically it distracts you. Your sensory data, basically you get flooded with sensory data when you do this. And when you get flooded with sensory data, your brain is spending a lot of time processing sensory data, the experience of everyday feelings and touch. And this takes a lot of processing power, and your mind can only think about that. It can't be angry, it can't be sad, it can't be fearful, it can't be guilty, it can only spend a lot of time processing the senses, the sensory information. I call it sensory overload. And sensory overload is a very calming place to be. It's very focused, and your brain is fully occupied. And you're away from the concepts that might be in your mind. In your mind, that background that I talked about, that's so useful, that has a tendency to affect your emotions considerably because of the use of words and narratives, stories, meaning. And if those stories are distorted through exaggeration or overgeneralization or black and white thinking, you could generate some serious, big emotions, lots of anger, lots of fear, lots of happiness, and lots of sadness. And sometimes those get to be a little too much in the background. And so it's nice to retreat into some sensory overload, you know, and get some relief from the emotions that you might feel in the moment. And so that's kind of my theory about why being in this sensory overload condition is so enjoyable. You know, it's basically peaceful. It's a peaceful practice. And it might distract you from the thoughts that might be going on in your mind. And I think it's probably one of the premier ways to be relaxed, to relax yourself. And there are other meditations that are related to that. I won't necessarily go into them, but a lot of them focus on what's going on in the present moment. And that's great. Now, there is another path. There is another way. Another way is to focus on these ideas, and if they are causing you some kind of emotional pain or extremes of emotion in any particular way that might be bothersome to you, question those thoughts, reconsider them, reframe them here in the background, and get relief that way. You know, by changing the narrative, changing the meaning of these images and thoughts that you have in your mind. That's also another way to get relief. I'd guess a longer lasting relief. But you know, you can bounce in between either way, either one. One is like a more of a psychological, cognitive behavioral therapy type technique for gaining peace, and the other one is more what I'd call an Eastern philosophy type meditative, present moment awareness practice to gain peace. Either one works fine, and if you're tired of one, go to the other and switch back and forth. You know, this whole internal, external, back and forthing strategy could be helpful in sort of maximizing the peace that you feel throughout the day. All right, so there's my advice for the day. And thank you very much, Mary, for your passage in your Peaceful Living book. All right, so I went to the library the other day and I picked up this book. I thought, wow, you know, I've been reading a lot of picture books lately, and I was thinking maybe I'd change it up a little bit. And this is a book that I thought looked rather funny, and the chapters are short, and I was thinking I'd give it a try, maybe reading a little bit of it, maybe some passages, and we could enjoy some fiction storytelling. And so let's give it a try. So this book is called My Big Fat Zombie Goldfish. There's a warning here. It says, don't look into his eyes. He's hypnotizing somebody or himself. By Mo O'Hara. And I figured I'd give this a try. It looked like a fun book. And, you know, come on, zombie goldfishes. So, this starts out by saying, a frankly shocking tale. Okay. Chapter 1. The Evil Scientist. Yesterday, my big brother Mark turned into a real-life, actual evil scientist. I mean, he always was mostly evil anyway, you know, knocking me down things or over things, looking me in things or out of things, or locking me in things or out of things, squashing me under things or between things, that kind of mostly evil stuff. But lately, he's slid up the evil scale from mostly evil to nearly totally evil. It started the way he talked. Hey, Tom, he shouted. Remote, now. Mark spoke in short words, like his brain had shrunk or something. He grabbed the remote and kicked my foot away. Moron, he mumbled. My best friend, Pradeep, who lives next door, says that moron is a big brother word for little brothers. His brother Sanj, who's also mostly evil, calls him that too. Luckily, Sanj is away at boarding school, though, so he can only be mostly evil to Pradeep during school vacations. I told my mom about Mark going more evil, but Mom said it was just that Mark is hormonal. which I think is why he's moaning at home a lot. He said he can't help acting evil. Well, he didn't say evil exactly, but he should have. He said it's because he has lots of home moans racing around his body. Just when I thought Mark couldn't get worse, Granny and Granddad got him a chemistry set for his birthday. It came in a huge box with big official writing on the front that read, "Warning, only for use by children over 12 years old, to be used solely under the supervision of adults." While I was reading the box, Mark thwacked my head from behind. "Don't touch this, got it?" he said. I walked away, rubbing my head, mostly because it hurt, but also to get my head out of the way in case he decided to thwack me again. He took out a white scientist coat and looked at all the stuff inside the box. There were bottles and test tubes and cups and little stirring things all made of glass. Real breakable glass. Mom looked at the chemistry set and leaned over to me. "Maybe you shouldn't touch it, dear. It looks like an accident waiting to happen," she said. Mark put on the coat and turned around. He folded up the collar, shoved his hands in the pockets, and let a creepy smile spread over his face. "And you know that squirmy, prickly feeling you get when you let a millipede crawl on your arm? I had that feeling, but in my stomach." Mark had turned into an evil scientist, but I didn't know how evil he could get until he came home the next day with the goldfish. Caution with an exclamation point inside. And this caption says, "Yeah, I've got a few minutes before that accident I'm going to cause. I can wait." All right. Well, that was chapter 1. Well, that was fun. I like that. I like that idea of feeling hormonal. Hormonal. That's how I feel almost all the time. I'm hormonal. Hormonal. Oh my gosh. That is hilarious. This is going to be a fun book to read. Mo O'Hara, My Big Fat Zombie Goldfish. I love this idea that Mark, his brother, was turning into an evil scientist. Yes! Sounds like my kind of story, right? All right. Let's see. What else have we got? All right. So, I picked up another book at the library. Now, one thing I know about you, Emily, is you are very interested in searching for stuff. I have a feeling you are a natural-born explorer, as all humans are. And I think as a child and as a teenager, you're really exploring all kinds of things. And so I got a book called Explorers, which again is another DK Eyewitness Books book. So that got me to think about explorers that are relevant in my life and in yours. And that got me to think about our heritage, our ancestry. And one of the more significant events that happened in our history has to do with Spanish explorers. You know, we're talking about Christopher Columbus. We're talking about other Spanish explorers like the Duke of Albuquerque, like Cortez, the conquistadors. Now, this is not necessarily a part of my history that I'm proud of. In fact, I'm basically horrified by it. but it is notable. It is worth reading about and learning about. It did happen 500 years ago and probably continues in some way from a philosophical and societal standpoint, continues to happen today. And that is what makes it relevant and interesting and historical and related to your ancestry, and something that probably makes sense to touch on and think about. So anyway, let's talk about the Spaniards and their exploration of the New World from Spain. And basically what I've done in this Explorer book is I've selected a passage related to Spanish exploration. Now, in your name, your full name is Emily Claire Trujillo McFarlane. You have two middle names. That's right. Claire and Trujillo are your two middle names. And one of them, Trujillo, is my last name. I'm passing that name down to you as a remembrance of our heritage. And for that reason, I think it's significant. I think our heritage is significant and ought to be remembered. And I think Trujillo is a notable name. There is a city or a town in Spain named Trujillo, and that is where our ancestors hail from through my father, who is your grandfather. That is your grandfather on your dad's side. And so it's a very colorful history, and I wanted to touch on it. So let's read a bit out of this book regarding the New World and the Spanish explorers. Even the most educated Europeans knew little about the world outside Europe in 1480. So let me get you specified. This is the time we're talking about the 1500s. You know, basically about 500 years ago. Just 500 years ago. It's amazing how much society has advanced in the last 500 years. Anyway, south of the Sahara Desert in North Africa stretched vast impenetrable jungles. Asia was rarely visited, and the stories that travelers brought back were so amazing that few people believed them. To the west lay the vast Atlantic Ocean, but no one knew how wide the Atlantic was or what lay on the other side. Then in 1480, the Italian navigator Christopher Columbus announced that he had calculated that the East Indies lay just 2,795 miles to the west. Few believed him, and indeed it was later proved that he was wrong. Nevertheless, the Spanish king and queen paid for his expedition, and Columbus discovered America, where he thought the East Indies should be. This voyage was one of the most important that took place during the age of exploration. So, this is exciting stuff. Exciting. Imagine living in Europe, not knowing what's beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Oh my gosh. So much wonder. You know, so much that was unknown at the time. And then Christopher Columbus, funded by the Spanish king and queen, decided to go see what was going on over that horizon. And wow, that began what will have been the discovery of North America, the North American continent, starting with Mexico and then moving up to various other islands and then what we call the United States of America today. So pretty amazing stuff. And in fact, there's another passage that I wanted to touch on. You know, I'm not going to have time to read it. Anyway, so why is this significant? Well, it happened only 500 years ago, which I'm just having trouble contemplating that it was just 500 years ago and we did not know that North America existed. 500 years ago is not that long ago. So the crux of the story is that all the Spanish came out to the New World to find gold and also preach Christianity and through, I guess at the time, the Catholic Church. And, this was a big deal. This was a big deal. And, our ancestors traveled the Atlantic Ocean and began exploring and meeting the native peoples of North America. And I think meet is a meeting. I'll just say they met them. They met them, the Native American Indians. I want you to know that I have in my blood at least 14% Native American genetics. I've had my genes tested, genotyped through 23andMe. And so in a way, what is remarkable is that you and I have genes related to both the conquerors and the conquered. So my point is that you and I have genes related to the conquerors and the conquered in this story. Yeah, we have not just a little bit of genes, but a lot of genes. I mean, I got 14% Native American blood in me, which, is, and I think when it comes to Northern European blood, I'm probably like 60%. So 60, 70, that accounts for almost 80% of our genetics, or of my genetics. And that is this incredible war between the old world and the new world. The Spanish conquistadors and the Native American Indians. I'm on the Native American side. I've got blood that hails from Mongolia, Asian countries deep in the heart of Asia. And you have that blood too. You have those genetic genotypes too. And so in our blood, in our genetics, there is a memory of this huge conflict. This conflict between warring people, this conflict of cultures, of East and West conflict, of conflict between Eastern and Western philosophy. This meeting, this joining, and we're the result. And it's phenomenal to imagine. And I think it's a significant part of my history. And I'd like you to recognize it as a significant part of yours, because I think there are a lot of lessons to learn from this integration of peoples and cultures. The needs of these different peoples, I think there's a lot to learn. And so that's why I think it's significant, and that's why I'm spending time addressing it. And it's also interesting because it deals with exploration and history and archaeology and anthropology, and it's just all kinds of great stuff. Genetics and science, the science of the day. It's really fascinating stuff. And I suggest and offer this as something that you can explore. You've got both this event that happened. You've got both sides of it in your blood, in your body. You're made up of these two different cultures, Native American culture and the Spanish culture. And, maybe you would be willing to tell the story, not only to your children, but your children's children. I think it's a fascinating story, and the evidence of the story, its existence is all around us. We can go to La Purisma Mission, a remnant of the Catholic Church's influence over Native American culture here in the state of California. And when you visit New Mexico, to visit some of my family there, you'll be able to see all the Trujillos that exist in that place, all these relatives that are around that you are related to in New Mexico. And you'll be able to go to the Museum of Art and Natural History and observe some of the artifacts and articles and documents related to this incredible time of transition that happened, about 500 years ago. And, and it is continuing to unfold today, as the Native American peoples here in the United States, live on reservations, live on and off of reservations, and how, that whole interplay and interaction is between, say, the federal government and the independent Native American state. And, it's really fascinating stuff. It's something that you can spend an entire lifetime thinking about. And, I don't know. Personally, I'm intrigued by the whole story. And I think there's a lot to learn. And I don't know. It's worth thinking about, because there are a lot of fascinating ideas that sort of our link to the past. And it's our link to what is significant and important. And it's also a good reminder about how badly things can go wrong. And they went really badly. And how things can go pretty right. So anyway, I'll talk to you later, girl. I want you to know that I love you. I love you just the way you are. There's no need to change for me. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace and love.